What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. I'm Kangas. I finally shaved my mustache and I'm never growing it back again. Unless we had 200k subs and then maybe. Anyway, today we're talking about the difference between solo queue and competitive on the Wild Rift. If you're looking for some inspiration for your solo queue or competitive games, then hit that sub button and let's get right into it.
Comparing solo queue to pro play is kind of like comparing apples to peaches. It is in fact the same game, but also completely different. When queuing up for solo queue, you're thrown into a group of random people for that game. You have to ask if you're even allowed to play your main role and are forced to adjust if not. On top of that, your communication is limited to pings and in-game chat only. As a result, you won't necessarily feel a strong sense of teamwork. It's more about your individual ability to punish the enemy's weakest link continuously. However, queuing up for competitive is an entire different experience. All players are on their best roles and know each other's playstyles and habits in-game. They've had practice, conversations, and potentially even team coaching to identify their team-wide issues and goals. More than that, communication also happens instantaneously via headsets, and strong team-oriented play makes up the core of competitive play. Before we go into more details of solo queue, make sure to check out the Wild Rift Discord in the comments below for everything Wild Rift in the future and to get your own competitive team rolling. Also hit like and subscribe to stay updated on all Wild Rift content in the future. So, we can differentiate between three major groups in solo queue. Let's start with the first one. Lower tier solo queue. Mostly, you'll find players here that play for fun, are newer to the game, or ones that don't really ask themselves what they need to do to get a win. There is no clear-cut goal in their gameplay. They mostly do things because they enjoy doing them, rather than doing them because they're good. Moreover, you'll see a lot of people stopping weaker players. That's a sign of a smurf, that are either newer to the game or are in the process of testing out a new champion. Consequently, a lot of people are frustrated as they lack critical information to turn their game around. Which, by the way, we also made a video on that topic, so you should definitely check that out if you feel like you're struggling with falling behind. However, a lot of people just don't focus solely on winning, but rather on their own enjoyment. Their item builds are mostly selfish and only aim to help themselves rather than being the most efficient. In reality, the focus on enjoyment causes people that are frustrated to potentially AFK or rage quit way more likely than in higher tier gameplay. Sadly enough, this may also happen in higher tier gameplay, just less likely. With that being said, we're moving to the next tier, upper tier solo queue. As you're climbing through the ranks, you slowly start to notice minor to major differences. The players now tend to shift away from the individual approach of just enjoying the game, and instead lean towards focusing on winning. This also includes a drastic change in champ select behavior. People are way more cooperative in adjusting to other people picking their desired roles. Not only that, but compared to the lower tier solo queue, you'll also sense a change of what champions are being picked. Before climbing, you'd see a lot of variation in champion choice, but as you go higher and higher, you witness the pool of champions picked shrink. Some champions are just better than other champions, and some are just very good into specific matchups. Taking that into account, you can now assume that there is reasoning in the selection of champions, be it synergy or counterpicking. Another noticeable improvement is the utilization of information in-game. Pings and chat commands become more valuable as you see them being used with strategy rather than out of frustration. Here's an example we can all relate to. Oh no, I was in base, my laner roamed in full vision to my dragon lane, and they still died, and now I'm the one getting pinged. Helpful. Really. Time for a word of caution here though. Just winning lane won't be enough anymore to win your games consistently. If you do not properly rotate and play around your team, your chances of winning decline by the minute. Objectives rise in value, and with that in mind, the value of vision increases drastically. Vision is a team effort, and everybody should be equally concerned about setting it up properly. And don't worry guys, even in upper tier solo queue, it's hard to set it up due to the lack of instantaneous communication. Now before our final tier, it's time for our question of the day. How many people do you like playing pre-made ranked with the most? Personally, I really just play solo queue, so I can't really relate to this question, but I'm curious what y'all think in the comments below. Speaking of group queue, Wild Rift allows you to queue up as groups of 2 and 3 people. Thanks to that, it's very likely that the majority of your group will receive their primary roles. Keep in mind though, you are still playing with 2 random people, so adjust if required or ask politely for your role. Communication is now instantaneous and super easy between the pre-made group, but don't forget your other teammates too. They don't know what you know, so you should aim to use the ping and chat system to the best of your abilities to give them a proper heads up, if need be. Thanks to the group's teamwork, a weaker member of the group may climb higher than they'd be able to in solo. Group play also looks way more similar to competitive as you're trying to synergize as much as you can with each other. Champion picks, gank setups, and plans are communicated in voice, and everyone is on the same page with only 2 other people needing to be informed via chat. Consider this, I'm playing Aurelion Sol and my jungler is playing Lee Sin. Both of us are very nimble inside of fights and can influence the map early on thanks to our mobility. My champion likes to push the wave fast and then leave towards other lanes. Remember, my jungler is on voice with me and can rely on my support when he's looking for a play, which then generates a number advantage in our favor. Neat for snowballing and setting the pace of the game, right? And last but not least comes competitive Wild Rift. Here we feature all positive aspects we've previously mentioned and start adding more and more details, starting with draft. Pre-made teams usually have a specific plan when they go into a game. They want to secure the best champions and build their teams around them. So here's how you do it. Your carry is Yasuo, a strong laner which terrorizes mid lane and thanks to his kit, might just turn entire fights around. Remember, he can ult knocked up people, that is very important. Now you're trying to secure more and more champions that fit the same theme of that champion. 1, they want to go in, and 2, they ideally have a knock-up that Yasuo can play off of. So let's add some champions that are strong in their respective role and synergize with Yasuo. For Baron lane, we could add Malphite, Wukong for jungle, and Alistar for support. The marksman here would simply fill the demands of what type of damage the team needs. It might even be a mage. With a mage, the enemy team cannot itemize against Yasuo alone. Luckily, Kai'Sa kinda fits this anyway, as she does mix damage. In addition to the change in draft, the itemization also undergoes slight changes. Especially tankier champions on Baron and Dragon lanes are now looking for less selfish items and enchantments. They're planning to increase their allies' damage and survivability, as well as making themselves more durable. And if you want to gain more insight about picking the right items at the right time, check out our video on itemization. You'll find tons of builds and ideas for every role. But let's just lead with an example here. You just saw my latest video and you lock in Braum. You got 2,800 gold in your pocket. The enemy team has a lot of magic damage and you want to itemize defensively. In solo queue, you might see a lot of people build something like an adaptive helmet, which is very selfish. However, in team play, you'd probably see the Braum build Abyssal Mask, if his team has a strong magic damage dealer. This would combine his goals of becoming tankier, plus increase his teammates' damage. But now I want to take a moment to speak a little bit more about the nuances in competitive play. Keep in mind that you can use all this information in your solo queue games, but use it with caution. Strategy plays a huge role in solo queue as well as competitive Wild Rift. Securing any kind of lead is helpful to get that victory screen after all. We've all been in this position before. We were winning until we weren't. Racking up kill after kill, but then what? After the early stages of the game, we ideally want more than just kills. Every single kill should lead to something else, that being an objective. For instance, an objective in the form of towers, dragons, enemy jungle camps, the Herald, you get the idea. Quite literally anything that you can take away from your enemy counts as an objective. In light of an objective's value, they might turn into points of conflict if both teams are equally as strong. If this scenario comes into play, tactically placed vision becomes invaluable. The right timing and setup allow the team to properly navigate around these pressure points without being picked one by one, which is usually the thing that happens in solo queue. And next up on our list of differences is the role of support. In solo queue, you rarely see a support that is leaving Dragon Lane to assist their team. By nature, support isn't shackled to Dragon Lane. They might as well look for proactive plays on the map if they're available. Here's also a neat trick to all the support players out there. After recalling, don't just walk straight to bot lane. Instead, walk towards mid lane while you assess the current state of the map. By doing so, you might spot an opportunity that you can capitalize on. In case you see something, you're way closer to actually doing something about it. And if not, you can still just walk to Dragon Lane with your AD carry. So don't be that kind of support that just sits in lane and waits for something to happen. You can be the one to make something happen too. Hand in hand with the support goes the marksman. The marksman in competitive is primarily known for being the solid backbone of the team. Their purpose is being the DPS for late game teamfights and epic monsters. As a result, you'll see them farm on their own at peace for far longer than you'll do in solo queue. In a perfect world, the marksman just keeps on farming until they hit their power spike, groups for objectives, carries the fight thanks to the gold, and therefore wins the game. However, in solo queue, this isn't as easy. The games are messy and way less controlled, and do not always allow you to quietly collect your gold. Being aware of what is happening and spotting situations you have to move to are integral to being a good solo queue player, regardless of your role. Peacefully doing your jungle camp, not expecting anything to happen? Well, what would you say if two champions with Smite just came around the corner to invade you? Sounds like some weird solo queue thing, right? Well, guess you haven't watched the Wild Rift SEA Invitational Semifinals. On a quick side note, if you take Smite in lane, you gain 20% less gold for minions, so don't try this one in solo queue. Anyway, one team picked Lee Sin and Xin Zhao as junglers into Shyvana, a farming jungler. The strategy seems clear. Invade early and put Shyvana behind as much as possible. And here's how they did it. They invaded the enemy Baron side as a 4-man squad, trying to get a pick, some vision, and Shyvana's jungle. The enemy Baron laner fell victim to this unexpected invade and died. Shortly after, they collect the enemy red buff using both of their smites and move through the middle lane into the other side of Shyvana's jungle. Little secret here. In League of Legends, you cannot move past the middle lane between both mid lane towers without getting shot at least once. Good for us that in Wild Rift, you can just walk past them and preserve that extra HP. By entering the side Shyvana is currently on, they're forcing the enemy to respond as fast as possible. If they don't, Shyvana will be pressured out of her jungle entirely. This strategy, in theory, might not be the best, but it showcases a very important thing: the power of communication and working as a team. So let's recap for a second. The ability to communicate in advance of a play and all players being on the same page make up for the biggest difference between solo queue and competitive. Solo play is much more chaotic and focused on individual performances. Like, hey, I'm a Zed, I'm gonna outplay these people and win just because I'm better. Competitive, on the other hand, tries to combine control and strategy. They're trying to win with the way they draft, set up, and synergize. So how can you beat that?
And that concludes today's video on solo queue versus competitive. Leave a like, make sure to sub, as well as join our Wild Rift Discord for everything Wild Rift in the future. Also, don't forget to answer our question of the day in the comments down below too, but most importantly, best of luck on the Rift. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.